Yeah, because you can think of the muscles like a towel, you know, like a towel. You crumple it up. If you try to stretch it, sometimes it's not like entirely straight, you know. If you try to massage it, sometimes it's still crumpled a little bit. If you use the massage gun, it loosens. Then after that, you foam roll it to iron it out. Then you stretch it to lengthen it. Then it becomes, you know, like just nice, you know, like a flat towel. Yeah, correct. So I'm Sean. I'm a physiotherapist by profession. So I've been in this field for 10 years more already. So currently I'm running my own clinic, so physio. So it's been around since 2016. We started off as like a place where we offer sports massage courses and sports equipment, and then gradually we evolve and we integrate everything together: physiotherapy, massage therapy, you know, courses and equipments as well.
So today we're here. We want to talk about the importance of movement. Movement that includes topics like flexibility and mobility, right? So let's start with what we mean by the basics of movement and how it's important to people.
I think for movement, you have to. It's not like, okay, of course you can walk, you can sit, stand, all this. These are movements, these are basic movements, but movement is a lot more than that, you know, especially when there are times where you need to do things that are out of the norm. Example, maybe you may find, I sit and stand, I walk, I'm okay. But sometimes when I want to wear my trousers, then I realize that I have some difficulty trying to bend down, trying to wear it, you know, or even simple things like, say if you want to reach overhead, you know, you want to take some stuff, but you realize, a bit stiff, a bit tight, you know, you can't reach. So these are also considered movements, okay, that you want, which is not your daily, like, you know, walking and sitting kind of movement. So with all this, you have to take into account things like flexibility, things like mobility as well, which these two terms are quite often used interchangeably, but there are still some, they do overlap a little bit, but they are still a bit distinct.
And this I think also is more important as we get older. As we go through a career where we're sitting behind the table a lot, and then we don't move around as much as children do. And how does that sitting behind the table limit our flexibility and mobility?
So you must have heard of the thing, you know, humans are meant to move, are meant to, you know, not be stationary and things like that. So that's why I always encourage my clients and my patients to move a bit more. Of course, nowadays we are a lot more sedentary than we used to be 10, 20 years ago. You know, a lot of work are more desk bound, and especially during this pandemic, we start to work from home a lot. So a lot of sitting, a lot of not moving around. Yeah. So what happens is when you don't move, okay, sometimes the muscles will be in a shortened position for some specific muscles. Say for example, when you're sitting down, the hamstrings are shortened because your knees are bent, and sometimes people like to sit cross-legged. You know, your hips tends to be a bit tighter as well because it's in a shortened position. Or even sometimes the chest becomes a bit tight because then you start to round forward and start to do your computer work and stuff, and you get so engrossed with it that you don't move for a few hours. Those one time, two times, those are okay. You may find that it's a bit stiff, a bit tight, but as you accumulate it throughout the months, the weeks, and the years, what happens is that the muscle will be shortened. So once it's shortened, it affects your flexibility and it affects your mobility as well.
So shortened meaning like it's like tightens itself, right?
Yes, correct. Yeah.
What is the difference between flexibility and mobility?
So flexibility is more with regards to like length, muscle length, you know, how far you can stretch your muscles. It overlaps a little bit into the joints as well, how far you can move your joints, you know. Some people, when you talk about flexibility, you know, last time when we do sit and reach, people say, you're very inflexible because you cannot touch your toes when you're doing that. So it's not just about the muscle length, also sometimes how far you can move at the hips as well. Yeah, so that's about flexibility, like how far you can move on the muscle length. But for mobility, it's a bit different. Mobility is how well you can move freely or how well you can move efficiently. So when we talk about being free and being efficient, it's not just about the length already. You know, it's about your control. You know, whether you are able to activate the right muscles to do the right thing. Meaning, you know, you could have good flexibility in the joint or the range of motion. Meaning, I can help you to move the hand up, you have full range. But when I ask you to do yourself, sometimes you realize, yeah, a bit stiff, like a bit hard to, you know, a bit tight. So this is what we mean by mobility. Okay, mobility. And you also have to take into account the proprioception, whether you can feel the joint in space, your perception and your awareness of your joint. So that means sometimes things like, say if you want to reach for something, okay, or you want to reach behind. So if you don't have the proprioception of your joint in space, sometimes you can reach, but you don't reach at the right position. You reach a bit below. Whereas if you know that, you know, I can move a bit higher, then you actually can move a lot more easier. You can activate the right muscles. Because if the joint is not able to sense its position in space, it cannot send feedback to the brain to tell the brain about its position, then the brain cannot send signal to the right muscles to activate, to produce that movement.
Can exercise help? I mean, firstly, it degenerates because we are inactive, so we don't always use the full range and the flexibility. How to counter this? Is it only exercise?
A lot of times exercise will help because, like I said, when you want to move, of course stretches will help as well. Things that can limit mobility are things like muscle weakness, muscle imbalances, you know, injuries, traumas. Yeah, all this can limit mobility. But there are so many factors that you want to look at. These are the external factors, you know, that can cause you to have limited mobility, and these can be done through exercise, through training, you know, getting you to be more aware of your joint space, you know, the proprioception and stuff like that, you know, strengthening the weaker muscles that are not able to produce that movement. But a lot of times there are also other things that are more intrinsic that can cause you to have limited mobility. Yeah, because the body is fascinating in the sense that it's always a bit alternating, it's stacking one on top of each other. So if you look at let's say for the spine or the general overall posture itself, the head will curve back, the neck will curve forward, upper back will curve back, lower back will curve forward, buttocks back, knee forward. So it's like always alternating. Same thing for mobility as well. Okay, for the joints or for the body, there are some parts that needs to be mobile. There are some parts that needs to be stable. So the head here, the neck here will have to be stable to support the head. The thoracic, the middle back will have to be a bit more mobile to move. Lower back again stable to support. Hips have to move. Then knees stable again. Then ankles have to move. Then the foot stable. Same thing, shoulder has to be mobile. Then the elbow stable. So it's always alternating. So a lot of times we are a lot more mobile on places that should be stable, and we are very stiff on places that should be mobile.
And that causes a lot of injuries.
Correct, that causes a lot of injuries because then those places that are supposed to move are not moving well, then you start to move other places more. That will cause injury, or that can also cause you to compensate as well. Yeah, so if those places that are not mobile, you start to work on other places more, then it can cause compensation and injuries. Yeah, so other than working on strengthening, you know, loosening the muscles that are tight, strengthening the muscles that are weak, on the proprioception, sometimes you also want to look at, are those places that are supposed to be stiff a bit too mobile? Are those places that are supposed to be are those places that are supposed to be stable too mobile, or those places that are supposed to be mobile too stiff?
Yeah, I think a lot of people don't understand that part. You know, unless you purposely go and study, if you're a personal trainer or maybe train, a lot of people don't realize the difference between the parts of the body that are supposed to be stable, they are stabilizers, and those two are more for mobility. You know, I think that's something that's also probably not very not said very often and not really told or taught very often.
Yes, correct. It can be quite confusing also, because as much as you want those places to be mobile, you also need them to be stable, you know. So it's kind of, sometimes people get confused. So should it be stable or should it be mobile? Yeah. But for it to be mobile, for it to move freely, safely, it has to be stable, meaning it's able to move freely without it being like dislocated or without it being overstretched or overextended. That's the meaning of stable. Stable doesn't mean it has to be stiff. I think that's the most common misconception.
Can too much exercise be bad for your flexibility and mobility as well?
I think it's always good to move. I always advise my patient it's always better that you exercise than you don't exercise. But like, you know, exercises, they work the muscles, they use the muscles to produce the movement, right, when you're exercising. So when you're exercising, muscles are being used, the tendency of them to be tight will be higher as well, yeah, as opposed to you sitting down. Of course, sitting down, the tension is a bit different from when you exercise. That's where the muscles, you know, go through a bit of lengthening and shortening, whereas that one is just shortening if you sit down and don't move. So what I think is, yes, exercise will help to reduce, you know, will help to improve mobility in the sense that there's movement through its range. So you have to be selective about the exercises. Yeah, some exercises like strength training, some people, they do really specific ones. They don't work through the whole movement itself. So when it's very isolative, when it's very, you know, you just want to work a certain range of motion, then that of course will not help with the mobility or will not help with the range of motion. Things that are a bit more dynamic, that you work through a lot of range, you know, things like sometimes like yoga, even Pilates, that helps you with the proprioceptive and the core, it helps.
So it's like we need to also work in exercises that make us move more, as in
Yes.
move the whole range of that joint.
Correct. If what you are targeting is more on the mobility, you know, you want to move through better range, more range, then those are the exercises that you want to go for. Yes.
Because I also think like the one thing that a lot of us are guilty of is that we always tend to ignore the cool down of our workouts,
correct.
Which is where all the stretching and flexibility stuff all comes in, right?
That's right. So post-workout recovery is always very important, because as much as you move a lot, like I say, the muscles will shorten, they will tighten. So if after the workout you don't do anything to help to loosen it up, then some of the fibers will just stay tight, they will just stay tense.
And then that works against you again.
Correct, that's right. Then it further limits as much you want to move, but then it limits you, you know, it's holding you back. Yeah, so post-workout recovery, like, you know, stretches, static or dynamic, you know, those like myofascial release, foam rolling, all this, they do help as well, yeah, to help to relax the muscles, loosen them up a little bit. Even nowadays, things like massage guns, they also will help also. Yeah, so I always feel it's better if you use them all together, because there's not one that is the most effective, but if you combine them all together, it's actually very good. Yeah, because you can think of the muscles like a towel, you know, like a towel, you crumple it up. If you try to stretch it, sometimes it's not like entirely straight, you know. If you try to massage it, sometimes it's still crumpled a little bit. If you use the massage gun, it loosens. Then after that, you foam roll it to iron it out, then you stretch it to lengthen it, then it becomes, you know, like just nice, you know, like a flat towel. Yeah, correct.
So exercise is probably the one main thing that will help maintain or even improve our movements, our flexibility and mobility.
Yes.